If you are a fearful avoidant, here is how your core wound of betrayal is wreaking havoc on your relationship. I'm Dr. Sarah Hensley. I'm a specialized social psychologist, and I've been studying the science of attachment and attraction inside romantic relationships for nearly 20 years. And here we are with another edition of Hardline Relationship Advice. Don't worry, I'm going to make a video for the anxious preoccupied and the dismissive avoidant. So the core wound of the fearful avoidant is that of betrayal. So how does this form? It forms in childhood when at some point, usually during very early childhood, even when you might not have a lot of memories, you looked at one or more of your caregivers, okay? Maybe bio parent or somebody that raised you, and you went, you can't show up for me in a safe way. You can't love me in a way that feels good to me. And that is a betrayal because I am the child and you are the adult, and it is your job to show up for me and to love me and to make me feel safe inside of this intimate relationship that we share as child and caregiver. So what does that big old betrayal wound do? Well, you have to understand that this is all happening at the subconscious level. Attachment imprints psychologically exist in the subconscious. The subconscious doesn't have language, okay? It does not have language. It speaks within feeling of the body. It speaks in the activation of the nervous system. And so all of this isn't up here where you're like, you know what? I believe that everybody's going to betray me. So let me go ahead and choose partners that are going to make this a self-fulfilling prophecy. They're going to betray me, reinforcing the wound that everybody will always betray me. You didn't know that's what happened to you, did you? So then inside romantic relationships, not only are you choosing partners that are usually narcissistic or extremely avoidant and are going to leave you feeling betrayed, but you also end up betraying yourself by staying with these individuals, right? So you can't trust other people, but then the biggest loss is the loss of self-trust over time, for sure. It also creates a level of hypervigilance. People with childhood trauma where that creates the big betrayal wound, there's always this level of hypervigilance because you had to look at your caregivers when you were young and be like, well, was dad mad? Should I go in the living room or do I need to head upstairs? I know I did. I grew up with a bipolar father, and it was like, what mood is dad in today? Do I need to go hide? Can I be around the family? And so when you have that level of studying people to stay safe in childhood, you are going to study your romantic partner. So you can, if you are a fearful avoidant, you can detect an expression change, a tone change, a look on their face in 0.25 seconds that is going to activate that wound of, oh my gosh, maybe I'm going to be hurt in this situation or even betrayed. Time to be on alert. And your nervous system is going to activate into a trauma response of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. For the fearful avoidant, they usually toggle back and forth between flight, holding it all in and feeling miserable on the inside, but feeling the emotions deeply, and fight, which is externalizing all of that emotional energy and dumping it onto your partner. Another thing the betrayal wound does is it really gives what I call the negative bias inside of relationships. The fearful avoidant, I think, is the most prone to making the fundamental attribution error, which, if you don't know what that is, you can Google it. But basically, it's this idea that when people behave negatively, we oftentimes attribute other people's behavior to stable personality characteristics instead of situations or other factors. So the fearful avoidant, not only are they putting their partner under a microscope, but then they're viewing what's under the microscope with like a really negative lens, like where they can only really pick out the very bad things in the relationship. And so the bad things to the fearful avoidant, because their goal is to stay safe and not to be betrayed, it gives them that negative bias because being hyper aware of the negative aspects of the relationship would keep you safer than falling in the trap of only focusing on the positive when lots of other hurtful things are happening. So what do you do, right? What do you do? Well, knowing that this wound is there, knowing that it's in the driver's seat, knowing that it causes you to be hypervigilant, knowing that it gives you a negative bias in your relationships, knowing that it promotes excessive emotional reactivity and that you might have some real deficits in processing emotions effectively, staying in a trauma response over time, those are going to wreak havoc on your mind and body. And so you have to start building your capacity. Step number one is knowing that this pattern exists with you, okay? Is that inside relationships, you expect people to betray you, that you always give people like the most malicious intent or interpret their behavior in the most malicious way possible. That is just part of your attachment blueprint. So we have to be aware. But then we have to use capacity building tools. And this is what I teach in my hybrid group program, okay? Or if you coach with me one-on-one. You have to build your capacity to take control of your thoughts. Getting control of your mind is key, but we are not taught how to do it. We are essentially victims of our thoughts most of the time, and we have to get control of our mind. Then you have to learn proper emotional processing. That's way too much for one video. There's so much that is involved in that. And then you have to learn what the secure behaviors are and be committed to executing them. But you can't execute if you have not built your capacity. That's like having a car with no gas in it. As a former fearful avoidant, I can tell you this is the probably most painful attachment style to have. So if you are interested in learning more about this, you can see me at my website, thedatingdecoder.com.